The first thing is that I think to be an entrepreneur, you have to be comfortable being unpopular. I think the best entrepreneurs are running towards something that people can't see and that people don't think makes sense. And you just have to be comfortable. So I think the biggest thing is you have to be really convicted in your own idea and comfortable when people tell you that that's crazy. And then at one point they will look at you and say that was brilliant. And you have to appreciate that most of the world is not comfortable with risk. And that's okay.
Everyone's talking about the metaverse these days, but Workplace from Meta is different. I mean, the clue's in the name, right? Workplace is a business communication tool that uses features like instant messaging and video calls to help people share information. Think Facebook, but for your company. It's part of Meta's vision for the future of work, a future in which your job isn't just something you do, but something you experience. And if you've been listening to this show, you know that experience is something that I am very passionate about and talk about a lot. Workplace from Meta is creating a future in which we'll all feel more present, connected, and productive. You can learn more and start your journey into the future of work at workplace.com/future. Again, that's workplace.com/future. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Leading the Future of Work. My guest today, Alexa von Tobel, founder and managing partner at Inspired Capital and founder and former CEO of LearnVest. Alexa, thank you for joining me.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
It's funny, as I was saying your name, I was just thinking I hope I don't have any Amazon powered devices around me because that's what I call it.
I'm like, Jacob, it happens all the time.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, before we jump into some of the fun leadership, work, business stuff, why don't you give us a little bit of background information about you? I mean, how did you get involved with all this stuff that you're doing now? Take us back to before all this happened.
I'll go to the beginning. I grew up in Florida. I have two older brothers that I attribute so much of my success to. They always made me keep up. And I think that it sort of set a great mindset for my whole life. And I've always been really entrepreneurial. As a child, was always building things, building little businesses so that I could save extra money to buy. I was a gymnast, so I could buy, leotards or toys. And so instead of the sort of lemonade stand, I literally would be out there, taking things out of my parents' house and selling them. And my mom was like, do not take art off our wall and then sell it on the street. What are you doing? I think it was just really in my DNA to always want to build. And I also think I come from a family of builders. My dad was an entrepreneur. Both my brothers are entrepreneurs. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. And so the more I think about it, there's probably something in my wiring.
Wow. Yeah. A lot of entrepreneurs in the family. And so how did you get to creating LearnVest, Inspired Capital? What was that journey like? Maybe we could start with LearnVest first. What led to the creation of that? And what is LearnVest and Inspired Capital for people not familiar with it?
Sure. So LearnVest was a business I sold now 7 years ago. We were think TurboTax for financial planning for normal everyday Americans. So we had a really powerful mission, which was how to help empower every American to get access to financial advice. And that's what we ended up building was a platform. We had about 3 million users on the platform when we got acquired, and a financial planning software in the middle and allowed you to affordably get access to a financial planner. So that was LearnVest. I became a certified financial planner, wrote New York Times bestselling book, 2 books now, and really just went all in on helping understand and think about helping the American wallet thrive. And then after that, back to sort of my entrepreneurial DNA, I had stood up a little angel fund and was actively investing, loving it. And then said, I really want to build the fund that I wish existed for me back when I was a young entrepreneur building businesses. And so Inspired was born. And Inspired Capital is an early stage venture fund. We're headquartered in New York City. We invest in businesses around the country. We're a generalist fund, and we focus on exceptional founders who are swinging to build big iconic businesses. And we are their team to help go and traverse those exciting waters, and building businesses is what we do for fun.
Very cool. And to give people some context, you guys, I think LearnVest sold, what did I read, for 250 million, right? It was what it was acquired for.
No, it's actually 375 million.
Really? Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah. So
amazing. That's
375 million on our fifth birthday.
wow. So did you ever think that when you were creating LearnVest, I mean, like it's hard to imagine, right? You create it, it's like this tiny thing, and then it gets sold for or acquired for 375 million. Did you ever imagine that it would go from where it was to getting acquired for that amount of money?
I think I knew I was going to put my head down and work really, really, really hard. And I didn't ever think about what that would outcome would mean. And I actually think that's part of probably why we were successful. I was really focused on trying to build the right thing and not really focused on an outcome. But no, I mean, I was, I really also cared about the company, landing in the right hands, and Northwestern Mutual was one of the best places it really could land.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you've learned building that, because I'm assuming there are probably a lot of mistakes that you had to make along the way, probably a lot of lessons learned along the way. As you were growing and building that, can you think about some of the big mistakes or failures that you had as a leader, failed investments that you were doing, failed projects? What were some of those failures for you?
I know lots of people are like, "Oh, I failed all the time." I genuinely failed all the time. I look back, and there were lots of things that I didn't. I was 23 years old starting the company. By the time we got acquired, I was 30. I would say a 30-year-old is still figuring things out. So I was a child in so many ways, and I made all of the mistakes. First time I had to fire somebody, I don't think I did a great job. I hired people that I got wrong. I, you know, I stressed too much. I mean, all of the things. And I at one point I decided on my own actually to hire an executive coach because I was really an athlete growing up. And I said to myself, what made me a great athlete was I always had coaches to constantly keep playing the tape and looking at what I did and looking back and making it better. And I kind of had this deep instinct of like, I've never been a CEO before. Why on earth would I think I'm going to be good at it if I don't have somebody to help train me? And so, in the rearview mirror, that's probably one of the better decisions I really made. As I was really grateful, my executive coach opened my eyes to all the stuff I could be doing better. He also just taught me some basic lessons of like, of course, you're not going to be your best if you don't sleep, if you don't get exercise, if you don't manage your calendar. And I'm somebody who kind of burns my engine to the tilt. Like I push myself to extremes in ways that is absolutely not healthy. And so he kind of helped me find balance. And I continue, by the way, to find balance. I have to keep working at it. But so I think that was probably one of the best moves I've ever made.
When you say you were pushing yourself too hard, like give us an idea of what that was like. Were you doing like 10, 12, 14-hour days, working 7 days a week, weren't eating right, weren't like what was it like? Because
All of it. All of it. It was all of it. Working nonstop, literally nonstop. When you're really focused on something, you don't sleep that well sometimes. So I was joked, I didn't even get away from work when I slept because my brain would literally rethink through problems while I slept in my dreams. I would have board meetings in my dreams. I
oh
mean,
my
I'd wake up
God.
and be like, well, that was the least refreshing night of sleep because I'm pretty sure I worked the whole time.
Oh my God.
No, and so, you know, it was all of it. It was like, and through all that, you never exercise the way you're supposed to because I kept being like, I don't have time to exercise. Um, and I would be tired. I'd be fried. I would be, just again, like not my best. And this coach was great because it was like, no, you actually need to sleep 8 hours. You need to exercise. Exercise is the antidote to stress. So it's critical to actually go do it because it allows you to find perspective. Um, but yeah, I think, and again, just like taking at least one full day off on the weekend would just allow my brain to like just, decompress for a bit. And I found that all of that was incredibly helpful to making me better. The other big thing is was really fortunate to work with just some incredible people. One of my first cousins, I only have one first cousin. He's like a brother to me. He and I work together, and he's somebody I trust deeply. And, he'd be like, "You're being an idiot. That's not the right answer." Or, just I had people around me that could really give me really good input. And I think one thing that even at a young age, I was always, I would say, probably capable of is like I always listened to people around me.
Yeah.
And I would ask people like, please tell me if I'm getting something wrong. You don't tell me what I want to hear. Tell me what I need to hear. And I think some founders say that, but then actually don't. When somebody tells me something really hard, I look at them and I say, thank you. I'm really grateful that you just did that. That was hard for you to tell me the thing I didn't want to hear. I'm grateful for it, and really rewarding people for helping you get better. And keep in mind, it was a journey. Like I think I grew up a lot during those 7 years.
I feel like a lot of people today struggle with this, even if you're not entrepreneurs, even especially leaders, people who work in organizations, especially in a lot of hybrid work, virtual work going on. Like it's very hard to disconnect, to get away from technology, to stop working. What was there like a pivotal moment for you that made you realize, hey, this is bad? And how did you make that transition to create more balance? Like what were the steps or the actions that you took to create more balance for yourself?
Um, well, no, it wasn't like something happened, except I would always get sick. Like I always say my brain's actually really good at managing stress. I think stress and chaos actually makes me be my best self. And I actually learned through going through, so I sold my business on a Wednesday and had my first child that weekend.
That weekend?
That's literally that weekend.
Oh my God.
I went into labor, and I literally sold on the 25th, went into labor on the 29th. And for two of those massive, 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 massive things to happen in 1 week, obviously, like that's just like I was being tested on every level, mentally, physically,
Yeah.
and emotionally, all at the same time. Physically being tested, emotionally and mentally being tested. Um, and I think that I learned that in those moments, I really do rise to the occasion. I have this gear that turns on and I become calm, very stable, very like action oriented, focused, clear headed, clear eyed. So stress wakes me up. However, to answer your question now, um, that doesn't mean stress is good for me,
No.
right? And so one thing that probably the biggest indicator for me was always I would just get really sick. I would get literally influenza, like actual like the actual flu. Sometimes you think you have the flu, but like the actual flu where you get 105-degree fever and you're really sick and almost have to go to the emergency room. I had to go to the emergency room a few times just for getting so sick. And so in those moments, I would be like, I'm just pushing myself too hard. And that's not good. I want to live a long time. I want to take care of myself. And so, again, just recognizing that there has to be an off valve. I need to take a day off on the weekends. I need to unplug for 2 hours each night. Like that's important for just my brain and my being. Um, and I love work. Work for me is fun. And so that was the other thing is, work. Sometimes I think in America, work is this like, oh, work. I love what I do. I feel blessed that I get to do it. I love building businesses. I love helping people build businesses. But just recognizing like just actual downtime, sitting and reading a book, sleeping, getting a nap in, that's not a bad thing. Those are great things for your brain. And so I just kind of restructured how I thought about relaxing.
I'm really interested in this thing that you mentioned. You worked with a coach. And I've talked to a lot of CEOs on this podcast, and actually quite a few of them have told me that they've been working with coaches. And I feel like this is becoming much more accepted and commonplace than it was maybe 10 years ago, where it was like, oh, you're working with a coach? Like, what's wrong with you? And a lot of people are starting to work with coaches now. Why, or let's start with even how did the coach help you? Why is that so important? Because I think a lot of leaders out there could benefit from working with a coach, even if it's some sort of informal relationship that you might have. But what does a coach do for you? How did the coach help you become a better leader?
Well, so a few things. First of all, you're absolutely right. When I did it, it was not right now. It's like everyone works with a coach. Everyone should
Yeah.
have a coach. Everyone's in therapy. Everyone's working on themselves. I'm thrilled that that narrative has become so positive, but absolutely positively that was not the case. And so it kind of gives you a sense. I really went out of my comfort zone to do this, because you're right. If you're working with the coach, it's like, oh, your board asked you to do that
Yeah.
because something's wrong. You're not doing a good job, so we had to get you a coach. I put my hand up before anybody asked me and said, I'm going to go get one. And it does a few things. One, it creates this mindset of like, you have to get better at leadership. So it's literally putting your hand up to say, I want to get better. And I think what that signals to everyone around you is that you're in, input mode. Give me input, make me better mode. And I think that that creates a bit of a psychological safe space for people around you because
Mm.
it's like, I'm of course I know I have to get better. We all have to get better. And I think that that kind of gives people the comfort of like, if the CEO is going to do this thing, clearly like we're all a work in progress. And so one, I feel like it put me in input mode where people felt like they could give me more input, make me better. So that's number one. Number two, I was 23 when I started a company. My management team, by the time I was 25, 26, they were all 15 years older than me. So there was a moment where in my heart I'd be like, am I supposed to have all the answers?
Mm.
And just luckily, I trusted my intuition. And the answer is like, of course, I'm not supposed to have all the answers. Why on earth would I have all the answers? Like, I have the vision, I have the strategy, I know where we're going, but I'm not going to figure every detail out. And so I also think me being honest and vulnerable that, like, of course, I wasn't going to be perfect or have all the answers, was a very, very good thing to do.
It's funny. I was just going to ask you about vulnerability. So I'm working on a book that's going to come out probably mid-late 2023 about vulnerability, specifically for leaders, and why that's so important. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. So can you talk a little bit about your experiences with vulnerability? Was this something that you had to do? Any stories around being vulnerable with your team or your company that you can share, and maybe what the impact of that was for you?
Um, yeah. So the like honest truth is, I think I think that being vulnerable, one, I'm very comfortable being vulnerable, but it's, when you're a young entrepreneur and you feel like you have to have all the answers, like
Yeah.
your natural intuition is to feel strong and to have the answers and to be certain. And I found that, I mean, I founded the company literally because my dad had passed away unexpectedly when I was younger. And my mom overnight had to manage our finances. And I remember thinking, why is personal finance not something that people are really taught? And where's the outlet to get better?
Yeah.
I didn't share that story very often with people because it was something that like I'm very, very, close to the vest about because it was real trauma that I had growing up. And I found that at some point I was like, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I come to work every day. Here's what I care about. And it's a very, very real, authentic reason. And what came through that was, I think people really better understood just why I cared so much about what I was doing because I was the family on the other side, that we were trying to help. And so again, a good example of me being vulnerable finally with the why. Why am I even here? But like the board didn't, most of my investors didn't even know that story. And so I think as you grow up, um, you you get. I'm not perfect sitting here today. I'm never going to be even remotely perfect. You start to just realize that actually, I'd rather be with a bunch of people who know they're not perfect and are a great work in progress and constantly getting better, and comfortable being vulnerable and being in input mode. And I just at some point shifted into those gears.
Let's talk a little bit about talent, because part of what you had to do is build a team, build a company, attract and retain talent, which I know is something that a lot of people are struggling with now. Um, what did you do to get people really bought into the mission, the direction of the company? Because especially now, that's what we keep hearing a lot about: purpose, meaning, impact. What was your strategy to kind of convey that purpose and meaning and impact to the people who were working for you at the time, getting them like really excited to show up to work each day?
Um, a few things. So first, at one point I really shifted to being like the mission is everything. And so like our last question whenever we were hiring people was like, talk about a time that money's been stressful for you. And as you would imagine, it has literally been stressful for everyone. Money is this one topic where you always feel insecure about it because
Yeah.
there's somebody always who has more, somebody's always better. And so, one, I really focused on connecting people that we hired to our core mission. And it started being for major hires. I was like, talk to me about your own money, talk to me about your own family, talk to me about how money has stressed you out. And what was amazing is there wasn't a single person, period, ever in life that money has not been stressful for. It's a very stressful topic, it's an emotional topic. And so, one, I really always focused on hiring talent that really cared about our mission because if this is like a mercenary job where you care about just your salary, like we're never going to do our life's best work. And so, again, I followed my intuition on that one, and the mission really mattered. The second is I hired people that were much smarter than me, truly. Like, and I know everyone always says they actually were significantly better than I was at anything that they were doing. And then I trusted them, and I tried my absolute best to never micromanage and to really focus on empowering people. And I'm so grateful that those were some of my instincts because our leadership team was really, really, really impressive and has gone on to do extremely impressive things. And so I was really fortunate to be able to do that. And then just I trust my instincts. I think that's another big thing, Jacob, which is like if in my gut somebody I didn't feel like was a perfect fit, but I was desperate for timing, I always made bad decisions. And my gut always was telling me, I don't know if this is perfect. I don't know if this is your person. And rushing because of a timeline is a terrible decision. And so we always joked, you need 100% of talent and 100% of culture. You have to have both. And there's no trade-offs to make. You need both to be perfect. And so it just took time sometimes. So I listened to my instincts. I really attached it to the mission. I hired people that were way, way, way more capable. And then I listened to them. And, I was never perfect every day, but I really, really tried to adhere to that.
Workplace is a business communication tool from Meta. Think Facebook, but for your company. It's part of Meta's vision for the future of work. A future in which we'll all feel more present, connected, and productive. Start your journey into the future of work at workplace.com/future. Again, that's workplace.com/future. What if somebody was really good at their job, but their primary purpose or their focus was money? Would you not hire them?
That trade in the end never makes the company better. If somebody is really, really, really focused only on the money aspect of it,
But they're really good. But they're really good at what they do.
you need. Yeah, but remember I just said you need 100% culture and 100%
Yeah.
talent, and that culture piece is a little bit of like the company's mission and the future of what we're building really matters. And if paycheck is only the thing that you'd put at the top of the list as opposed to this bigger picture of what we could go build, it often meant that like it wasn't going to be the right long-term fit with everybody else who was truly focused on that mission. And I will tell you what's amazing, and I'm so proud of the Learn Best talent. And somebody the other day said to me, they were like, literally some of the talent at Learn Best was some of the best tech talent in New York, because we built a really complicated financial planning software with major algorithms, 7 patents pending when we got acquired, and like really special team that I'm really proud of. And so we got it right. And so at some point I also felt like I had to make sure I was adding talent that only made the rest of the talent better, and that bar kept getting higher, and I kept thinking that way.
Did you have, and do you currently have a process for yourself for development, for learning? Because obviously you were put in a position, like you said, you were very, very young. Even when the company sold, you were very young, but you were doing a lot of really complex things. Algorithm, building a business, you had to learn about all sorts of stuff that you were probably not familiar with, which is very relevant in today's world, because a lot of times we're put in positions where we don't know the answer, we have to figure things out. Did you have like a learning and development process for yourself, or was everything just kind of ad hoc, or was it kind of structured in some way?
So a few things. I was pretty structured about it at certain times, and then just in general, like I have a learning mindset. Like in my heart, I'm constantly in learning mindset. Like that's just I want to get better every day. I want to get
Yeah.
better at something every day, whether it's eating better, taking my vitamins better, learning new things, being a better parent, being a better wife. Like, I'm a work in progress, and I really do take that seriously and care. Being a better
Every day.
friend,
You
being a
think about
better,
this every day.
you know, every day. I really do. Every day, I want to get better, and I think we kind of all know the things that we don't do a good job of. Like, hopefully, you're self aware enough that you know. I definitely know. I have plenty of people in my life who have been really, really honest with me about what I'm not good at. Um, and then there's been periods of time where I've gone through very structured things. I had two different executive coaches through LearnVest history. Once I sold to Northwestern Mutual and I joined their management team, they hired me two coaches, not one. I had two full-time people putting me through all sorts of assessments, and I was really candid with them about things I wanted to get better at and be more thoughtful about. And it was amazing. Batteries of tests. I know my Myers Briggs. I know my learning style. I know my listening style. I mean, and that made me really, really self aware. Which, being more self aware over and over is a good thing to do.
So you really went in with these assessments, and were they helpful for you because there's so many different assessments and tools and resources out there? Like, do you recommend that people actually participate in those? Was it useful for you?
I found it to be incredibly useful. So I'll give you an example. My Myers Briggs. Um, I am an ENTJ, which is sort of classic. And my E is I'm extremely E, which means I'm very extroverted, probably not surprising. But I'm also a strong J, which means I'm I like to make decisions. I like to make them quick and I move on. I don't, I move on. Um, and I found that having, P, J is judgment, P is people who tend to be more, they make decisions at the absolute last chance they have. They gather as much data as possible. Surrounding myself with P's is a really good thing. And so one of the things I kind of learned is it helped me get a better sense of like, who do I need around me to make sure I'm filling in my own blind spots. Um, so again, that's an example. My husband's an extremely strong P. I'm a very strong J. It's a good source of conflict in our marriage. It's also what makes us like get to the right decisions. And in the end, our kids are better for that. And so it kind of gives you a sense of like those sort of assessments really almost like illuminate places where you've got to be careful. Um, but I've done a battery of them, and it also like it's almost like looking into your soul because you get a better sense of like how you are wired, which also can show you like where you're extremely strong and also where you're weak. I'm impatient, extremely impatient. I've gotten more patient as a parent, but I'm an entrepreneur. I'm like, let's do it today. Let's get it done today. Let's go
Yeah.
faster. And that's something I have to be really careful about. I have to surround myself with people who slow me down to make sure getting the right decisions. So that kind of gives you a sense of like just far more detailed self awareness.
You mentioned that you're alert as my dogs are like freaking out in the background. It's funny, right before we pushed record, you're like, "Is it okay if you hear a child?" And I said, "Well, you might hear a child or a dog, and you're probably hearing the dogs now."
Yeah, there we
Um,
go.
you mentioned that your approach to learning was structured. So can you talk a little bit about what that was like? I mean, did you set aside, for example, like 20, 30 minutes a day to learn about something new? And the reason I ask is because I think for a lot of leaders now today, for a lot of employees at companies, we're constantly bombarded with new things, right? New technologies, new approaches to leadership, new who knows what, that it's very hard to keep up. So I mean, how do we put some sort of a process in place for ourselves where we feel like we're constantly learning each day and growing and developing each day? I mean, thinking about it is great, but what's the action that you think people can take?
I would say two things. Number one, it's a mindset shift of um, I genuinely enjoy learning. So even I'll give you an example. Even if I was hiring, let's say I was hiring for a data driven marketing expert. Um, I would literally pretend as though I was taking a class on data driven marketing. And so I would ask as many questions as I could. I would take detailed notes. I'd ask for people's playbooks and I would listen and I would pick up so much. And by the end of it, I was like, I've learned exactly the best people on how they do this job. and I'd be so much better for it because I would actually end up hiring a better person. So that kind of gives you a sense. It's a mindset of like, I would constantly say to myself, I'm taking a class on X. That's what I'm doing right now. Second thing that I did was I'm very goal oriented. So at the beginning of the year, I sit down and I say, what are my goals for the year? What do I want to do? And it's on everything in my business, in my life, in my marriage, with my kids, physically, like health wise, like what are my goals? And I just try to achieve them. And that keeps you learning because you're trying to push yourself. And I think it's just very much there in the Myers Briggs. There's two people. There's two types, or in these sort of personality assessments. There's achievers and competitors. They look the same from the outside world. Competitors are like, Jacob, if you're going fast, I'm going to beat you. Achievers often don't even look at other people around them. They have a time that they want to accomplish, and their eyes are on their own mat, and they have very self-driven goals, and they're just trying to hit those goals. And again, it looks the same in walking through life, but I'm very much an achiever. I actually love when like my best friends accomplish major things. Like I don't feel an ounce of competition. I love that. That makes me so happy. And it's because I'm an achiever. My eyes are on my own mat.
Well, it seems like part of what you
And
developed is
again,
a
one of my best friends helped me learn that. One of my best friends helped me learn that. And it was actually a real breakthrough because it helped me realize like I wake up in the morning and I'm really focused on things that I'm excited to go accomplish. And I bring like real joy to that.
And it also seems like you have a very high level of self-awareness, which I think a lot of people, especially leaders, struggle with today. Um, did you do anything in particular to develop your self-awareness? I mean, I know you were a young leader when you were running your company. Is developing that self-awareness just about talking to a lot of people, getting feedback, taking assessments? Because you seem to know your strengths, your weaknesses, all these things about yourself quite well, which honestly, I don't think a lot of leaders do.
As I said, I think that that's like a real learned habit. I don't believe that. I mean, if I look at myself at 18, I was a complete idiot and not self aware enough. And, I don't think I was ever completely. I think I have high EQ. I think I definitely have high EQ. And um, I think that that's important. But I definitely believe my 20s and in my 30s, but my 20s especially, that self-awareness continued to go up, and I had to listen to things I didn't want to hear. I mean, um,
Yeah.
I got assessments of, here's how we perceive Alexa, here's what, and I would be like, oh god, that really sucks to read, but like that's true. Like they're telling the truth. Like that's, and I got to get better at that, and that's okay. Like none of us are perfect. um
Do you remember
so
any of
yeah,
them?
so no, I
Do you remember some of the
oh
things that
my
people said
god, do I
about you?
remember? Of course. So, I think a few things. Once my executive coach was like, Alexa, imagine a train station. He was like, my brain kind of does all this analysis very quickly. And I'm like, here's the answer. This is an outcome that we should probably just do. And I get to the right answer, maybe 9 out of 10 times very quickly. And I start running towards that outcome. And he was like, if you are using a train station analogy, you're 3 stops ahead, but everybody that needs to work with you is still left on the track because you didn't take them with you. Like you just run, and then they feel a little confused and you're frustrated because you're like, why isn't everyone at my train station? And so it was just one of these big moments where it was like, I really need to bring people with me. I need to make sure that everyone understands the context of why I've jumped to this conclusion, like why I'm here. Give them a chance to tell me if it's the one time out of 10 that I didn't get it right, um, and taking the time to slow down to bring people with me was just a massive thing. The other thing is, after selling my business, the CEO of Northwestern Mutual taught me so much, and I really, really admire him deeply, and I'm extremely grateful in my career I got to work with him. Um, he once said to me this great thing. He goes, Alexa, business is sometimes like tennis. And in tennis, if you have a partner in tennis, like you could hit every ball, but you're actually not supposed to. Like you want to let
Uh,
them swing and
oh, that's
get
a
one over
great,
the
and I
net.
love that quote.
And it was a great analogy. And he was like, in business, sometimes let other people have wins. Like let other people, you're building people's strength and confidence in their own stamina. And just because you can hit the ball, and it may be really easy for you to get it, sometimes let them have that win. And again, that was like a great moment where, as I've learned so much. I've learned how to be more effective. Sometimes I could get it done, but how do I get it done where everyone actually feels really good about it? Again, just sometimes it's leadership skills, and these skills apply to everything. They apply to your kids, they apply to your spouse, they apply to your parents, like they apply to everything.
How do you do that, actually, now that you mention that? Because that's a big question. How do you get something done where everybody feels like they're on the train with you? Because I hear lots of stories where, sometimes things do get done, but nobody feels like they were a part of the decision making, like they were a part of the journey. They feel like they were forced to be there. And it doesn't go well, even though the objective was technically accomplished.
Yes. So I think it's a few things. First, everyone needs to know the rules of the game. Like, what are our shared norms? What are the things that we all agree to? Transparency is everything, so that people feel like they had access to all the information, the data, and taking the time to get people's input. And I think one of the things, particularly at Inspired Capital is this really, really unique firm. We've overlapped more than 65 years of working together. Think about that, 65 years. I people on the team, I've known one deeply for 20 years. I've worked with many other people on the team for 13 years, 8 years. I mean, it's really significant overlap. I want people's input. They're exceptionally bright, brilliant people. I don't want to make decisions without their input. So rather than thinking like, oh, I got to get people's input, I'm like, that's just not where I live today. I literally live and I don't want to make decisions without their input, because they actually make every decision significantly better. And so slowing down a little bit, making sure everyone has all the context, all the details, and gives you input so that the team feels really good about the outcome. And by the way, that doesn't mean everyone agrees, but it means that at the bare minimum, everyone feels like they were heard. I think that's a really important thing, especially, we run an investment committee where we all get to vote for investments. And I want to hear everyone's input. They want to hear my input. It's about deep respect.
Thanks for tuning into this show. If you want to get a bonus episode where Alexa shares specific action items around how she makes decisions, what it means to practice empathetic leadership, how to develop an entrepreneurial mindset inside of an organization, and how to deal with doubters and being told no, then subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, which is $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year. If you subscribe, you're going to get early access to new episodes, ad-free listening, and bonus episodes such as this one with Alexa. It's the cost of a cup of coffee a month to basically be mentored by the world's top leaders. I hope you decide to subscribe and support the show, and I will see you next week.